Great turnout for this. Thank you,
Yes, welcome everyone. We're talking about Bitcoin today. Thank you for coming. So, as is tradition for having Bitcoin talks, we've got to ask who has heard of Bitcoin, first of all, raise your hands. Pretty much everybody.
I would hope so.
Who is holding Bitcoin?
Okay.
Holding or using Bitcoin? About half. That's pretty awesome, actually. That's really good. So we're going to be crash coursing through a bunch of stuff today because there's so many different angles we can take this conversation. We're going to start with a broad overview of why Bitcoin matters, how it fits into the world money landscape, because that's what people are starting to ask questions about. It's been around for over 15 years now. It's sticking around, so people want to know, where does this actually fit into society at large? And then we're going to move it into how you can use it as a traveler to make your traveling life much better. And we've got some personal examples of how we both used it a lot and how you can too. So, to give...
Let me add one more thing to
Go
that.
ahead.
We're also going to do, and I don't see it on your little list here, but we should also do a short explanation of like why Bitcoin and not shitcoin. So there's like basically in the world of money, there's Bitcoin and then everything else is shitcoin. That includes your Bulgarian leva, your US dollars, euros,
All crypto.
Ethereum, fucking everything.
Yep.
So we'll explain Why the distinction there as well.
Yep. So, taking it all the way back to just looking at what money is in the world. So, if you go way back in history, people used to use this thing called barter, which is when someone has 10 chickens and another person creates houses. It's hard for them to exchange value with each other because those are such different measures of the value that they're creating. So money became this tool in the middle where if I have 10 chickens, I can use money as that intermediary that makes those people able to trade, so you don't have to have 5,000 chickens equal to that house to sell.
Or
so,
one brick for a chicken.
Yes.
The other way around.
Yeah,
as well.
so all the people in a community can specialize on what they want to do and they don't have to trade that thing for what they want. The money is the perfect tool. So anyone that's ever told you that money itself is evil is wrong. It's just a tool that helps people exchange with each other. So there's been so many different types of money throughout history, and I highly recommend the book for anyone looking to look at just how they've all evolved over time. It's called The Bitcoin Standard. It goes through how we used to use rocks and seashells and things like this, but these quickly ran into problems because they could be gamed. Outside countries and nationalities could bring a bunch of, they could be better at creating or finding rocks, and they would come in. Glass beads is another popular one.
Glass beads is a classic one. So let me give you an example like this. Shells, there's an excellent essay by a guy called Nick Szabo, who's like one of the greatest polymaths of our generation, and it's called Shelling Out. If you get a chance, definitely read that. Nick Szabo, Shelling Out. His surname is Szabo. And in there he talks about how there was a period of time when shells were used as money, and shells were very rare in places that weren't close to the coast, right? So what humans did was they would find these rare artifacts and they would shave them down into particular shapes, and they would use them as the tool, which is money, in order to make trade possible. And then the example I always use to people is like, imagine you spent your whole life saving up, working to, save up a bunch of shells, and then you went to retire on the beach. And all of a sudden fucking shells everywhere. So it's no longer scarce. Like inflation would kill your money, right? So you had all different sorts of monies throughout the world. So you had like commodity money, so things like salt. The word salary comes from salt. But imagine if you spend your whole life saving up all this salt, and then your kid accidentally poured the water on it. Then all your money's gone, right? So money requires a set of attributes in order to make it a good money. And what happened over the centuries is human beings found better and better and better objects to use as money. The ultimate object, let's see if anyone has this trivia history here, what became money all around the world?
It lasted for thousands of years.
Gold,
Yes.
exactly. Why? Can anyone tell me why?
Scarce?
Scarcity is one element.
Anything
What else?
It is pretty.
Yeah.
Divisibility.
Yep, somewhat divisible,
Perfect.
yep. It's very durable as well, right? So like gold is gold wherever. But in my opinion, the most important thing is gold is one of the only, and probably I think it's the only, maybe there's two inert metals, which means gold doesn't react with anything. So you will find gold in its raw, pure form in Africa, in Asia, down in the ocean, anywhere. So you've got this unit, this magical metal that is the same everywhere. It is portable, it is durable, it is scarce, it is recognizable, it is homogeneous throughout. Gold doesn't react with anything. So you've got this perfect unit that slowly by slowly, not by decree, it wasn't told to anyone, it was just adopted bottom up as money. And if you think about how this happened, in the beginning, maybe a nugget of gold couldn't have even bought you a single chicken. It's like, you know, let's say you found gold for the first time, everyone's still using seashells and glass beads, and you go to buy a chicken, you're like, can I have 6 chickens for, and you know, the guy's like, okay, that'll be 6 shells, please. You give him some gold, he's like, what the fuck is that? Well, it's gold, it's gonna be the future of money. And you're like, well, can I eat it? No. Can I drink it? No. Can I wear it? No. Get the fuck out of here, give me my shells. And that's how it would have happened in the beginning. But over time, more and more people started seeing this valuable unit, or this useful unit, I should say, and imbuing value on it. So over thousands of years, the world converged all around that gold was money. So that was sort of the progression.
Yeah, and it's a long process because it just started out as people walking around seeing these pretty little yellow rocks and thinking, that's cool, I'm going to collect that and just hold it. And then once enough people started holding it, they started thinking, we could actually exchange this thing as a form of money. And then economies started building around that. And we use this analogy in Bitcoin as well, because right now most people view it as this like weird, cool internet thing, like sure, maybe I'll get some, it's kind of interesting. But in the future, it will become the main means of commerce if everything develops the way that we see it will. So going from gold to Bitcoin is a good step here. So all that understanding of why gold matters, why it has these, especially scarcity, these really good characteristics, you start to realize that all of these different monies we talked about have the similar problems from their physicality. The divisibility is one of the things that we talked about is very good, but the verifiability is an issue. So you can't always tell if someone mixes some weaker metals inside that. You can't really tell if you're just going to the store to buy something. They don't want to have like a whole verification process. It's clunky, it's heavy, it's extremely expensive to transport around the world. So since we have a global economy now, it's really tough to make that work. And so the physicality is starting to become a detriment as we go into the digital future. And so what seems to make the most sense that Bitcoiners have come to realize is that we need a digital form of gold that can mimic these same characteristics that have worked extremely well for thousands of years, that have historically proven to work very well, but it works in the digital realm. And so this is what Bitcoin's really doing. It's scarce, it has only 21 million coins total, and maybe you can dive into the details of why that's definitely going to happen, because it breaks people's brains to think that, oh, it's digital, someone can copy it, someone will make a new one, but that's not so much the case.
So a good way to think about it is this. Around the turn of the last century or a little bit before, the speed and the complexity of global economies started increasing at a really exponential rate. And gold wasn't suitable for the speed of commerce at that point. Also, you did mention divisibility earlier, but as an economy increases in complexity and as it increases in wealth, the same amount of gold buys more and more and more goods. So you get to the point where, what are you going to do? Like buy a coffee with gold? You have to like shave a little bit of gold off the side. It doesn't work. So what we figured out was, hey, let's take a piece of paper and create a promissory note, which is a claim on an amount of gold. And that was a good idea in principle. And for a long time, what happened was you would have these issued notes from a vault or a bank. The original term of the bank was a place to store gold and get certificates issued against it. But as always happens with such things, someone realized, well, wait a minute, no one's checking out how much gold I have, so let me just issue a few more certificates. And then we started creating what's called monetary inflation. Now, you know, there's been fights back and forth with economists for a long time about this, but what ended up happening if we fast forward to 1971 was the US, which was the last great power on the gold standard, said, look, fuck it, what do we need gold for? No one's going to come into Fort Knox anyway, let's just take it off the gold standard, and the backing of the dollar will be petroleum and the war machine, right? So that sort of happened, and for the last 50 years we've been in that paradigm, which is a pure fiat money, not anchored to anything physical or scarce in the real world. It's just like pure fiat. Or
and
pure
remember that vocabulary word, fiat. That is, fiat currency is that word that signifies this money that can be just endlessly printed by governments. And every single country on earth now has its own funny monopoly money that you have to go, and this is a little sneak peek of later, as a traveler, we know we have to go to the ATM and just throw out a bunch of fees so we can get this latest government's piece of paper, when when you start thinking about why do we even have to do that in the first place? We have all these rent seekers just taking money from us for doing these actions, exchanges also, you have to exchange your money. It's just not very efficient, and there really isn't any reason why we shouldn't just have one single money that works everywhere around the world and has the same monetary standard everywhere. So this is where it starts to get into, okay, so Bitcoin really does fit into this future. It's really relevant for nomads as well. But before we get too far into that, I think we should talk about the crypto thing.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because even earlier, a couple days ago, when people were throwing the pitches out at the stage, a couple people talked about their Web3 projects and blockchain crypto projects. And him and I both would agree that this is not really the way forward. Bitcoin really is the solution that people are looking for. It solves the biggest problem, and there is no second best. So do you want to dive further into that?
Let me put it like this. Bitcoin is the innovation, not blockchain, not crypto, none of that sort of stuff, right? So the problem Bitcoin specifically solves is getting the strength, the weight, the gravity of something like gold. So you've got the scarcity, you've got the single unit, the verifiability, all that sort of stuff, but with the speed of fiat, and particularly digital fiat. So Bitcoin is like gold that can be sent across the internet. That's like the big innovation. And the thing about something like this is it can be only created once. You can only get digital scarcity once. Digital scarcity prior to gold never existed. Digital information in the past was, I have an MP3, I can copy the MP3 by sending it to you, right? With Bitcoin, there is, and I'm not going to get into the technicals here, if you guys want to read, we can suggest some books and stuff like that, but Bitcoin was the first innovation to take a digital unit and turn it into something scarce, which cannot be copied, which cannot be double spent. That once in a generation or once in a millennia event happened once at the end of 2008, well technically January 3rd, 2009, when the first Genesis block was mined. And since then, Bitcoin has been a single chain with a single set of rules and a single ledger that has moved forward step by step by step by step, every single block, every single 10 minutes without going down ever. And every single block that goes past, Bitcoin gathers more strength, more economic mass, more trust, more economic gravity, right? All of the other cryptos are basically attempts at recreating fiat money. So if you look at if you're a central bank, it's the ultimate job, honestly. Like, we're all in the wrong business here, we should all be in central banking. But basically, you don't have to produce anything, you don't have to create anything, you don't have to do shit, you don't have to make any value, nothing. You just push a button and print a bunch of money. And all of a sudden you've got money. The problem is, for the rest of us, the amount of money that we worked for is now diluted, the value of the money that we work for is now diluted because there's more units for the same amount of value in an economy, right? So the ultimate game is to say, how the fuck can I be a central bank? And this is what the crypto nodes figured out. They're like, wait a minute, what if I can spin up my own coin and issue it to the market, create a beautiful marketing narrative around it, spend a bunch of money on marketing, and sell it to people as the next Bitcoin. So then a bunch of people go and buy it, they put their economic energy into this network, and then all of a sudden you've got the proliferation of shitcoins, which is why there's like, I don't know, what, 50,000 shitcoins now?
Too many to count.
God knows, exactly. And
anyone
every
can
single
do
one
it,
of them
so.
are shitcoins. Every single one of them are shitcoins. Bitcoin specifically, and you know, this is the funny thing, like sometimes people are like, oh, do you work for Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a protocol, no one works for Bitcoin. We have nothing to gain. In fact, I would prefer it, you know, I've been talking about Bitcoin for a decade now, and I would prefer that nobody touches it so that I can have more. But here I am being an idiot, explaining it to everyone. I have nothing to gain by you guys buying Bitcoin, but every shitcoiner has something to gain by you buying their shitcoin. It's a very different incentive, it's a very different mode of operation. And when it comes to Bitcoin, you've got this thing which is, it happened in almost like an immaculate conception, right? It was released to a mailing list, to a bunch of nerds who then tried it out. They spread it a little bit further, and it went under the radar for about 5, 6, 7 years. Everybody ignored it. They was like, oh, what is this stupidity, right? Like, no one cares. But throughout that time, it increased in economic gravity, economic mass, more mining, more nodes, more decentralization, more people using it, more wallets, more infrastructure, more everything, to the point where it was impossible to shut down. Now, like, to shut down Bitcoin, you'd have to turn off, honestly, you'd have to probably blow up the whole earth. That's the only way Bitcoin stops. Even if you shut down the internet in like all of Europe, Bitcoin still goes on everywhere else. You'd have to shut down the internet in the whole fucking world, but when you turn it back on, Bitcoin just switches back on. thing's worse than a cockroach. It doesn't go away. So like the thing is not gonna leave. So what people do now is they go and create these new shitcoins. They brand it under whatever, but the problem is it's issued by someone. It's issued by a person, a foundation, a group, a company, whatever, which means you don't have the same guarantees as Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the one thing that can't be shut down. Every other crypto, I mean, the US government tomorrow can go to the Ethereum Foundation and say, change the rules, please, double the supply.
And they have changed the rules. It's been completely changed
many times. Yeah. Every single crypto. I mean, Solana is another one. They're like every time, oh, we found a bug, they stopped the fucking chain. It's like, wait a minute, where was the censorship resistance? You know, so this is the case with everything else. Everything else, I put it in the bucket of fiat. The only two things that are really not fiat is gold and Bitcoin. The challenge with gold, though, as we said, it's physical, so it can't compete with Bitcoin. I believe long term, gold will always have an allure because gold, I think, is special. Like it comes from the center of the stars, right? And it's like exploded out. It's all throughout the universe and the galaxy. I think it'll always hold a special part in sort of human society. But in terms of money, nothing can compete with Bitcoin. It is the thing, and it's going to continue gaining mass. Like for every year that passes, Bitcoin gains another $1 trillion, for example, in economic mass. Anything that's going to start new, it's too late. There's no way to beat it technically, socially, economically speaking. It's done. The cat is out of the bag, and that's it. This is why Bitcoin only.
And another thing to mention on that tangent of where gold's place is in the world, when Bitcoiners and gold bugs are arguing over which one's better as a form of money, which one should be the next global reserve currency, gold is used for a lot of other stuff like jewelry, as we know, and wiring for mechanical stuff, and lots of other things. So the gold people will say, oh, it's used for so many things, so that gives it more value. The problem is that's not helping it be a money. It's actually inserting noise into its monetary function, where Bitcoin is only money. So it's going to be much more clear, much more efficient, and be a much better economic signal for everyone within the economy. And I just want to throw a couple more things in there just to wrap up that crypto conversation, to arm you with things that you're for sure going to hear from crypto people when they're going to say their coin is better. The most common one is that it's faster. You can transact super fast, and for that I would just question you, what is the actual problem we're trying to solve here? Is it really that hard to slap a credit card on the table and it's like an instant payment? So speed isn't really the problem here. The real problem is we don't have a form of money that holds its value over time. The fiat currency that we hold now is always losing value as the governments print it. We sort of glazed over that earlier, but the more that these governments print the money and increase the money supply, everyone's value is going down. So when you go to McDonald's, for example, and look at how the dollar menu is now the $10 menu, everything's more expensive. It's not that a Big Mac got 10 times more valuable, it's that your money got 10 times less valuable. It's degrading over time. So that is the true problem we need to solve. Yes, question?
Isn't that the sense of money in the way that it's not deflationary because it's not gaining value? If I want to hold Bitcoin and not want to spend it?
So the deflation versus the inflation conversation is great. Do you want to maybe cover that a little bit?
I want to do a question and answer. I
Yeah.
want to do a Q&A at the end, so hold that
I'll
question.
write that down.
That's
Yeah.
a very good question. The inflationary versus deflationary. Keep going. I want to ask if anyone has like some questions about crypto, Bitcoin.
Sure.
Once you do
I
this.
think we're good there. Should we just do a little break for questions?
So I want to hold that question for later because that's a bigger economic question. Does anyone have any question on the crypto, Bitcoin, or evolution of money or anything like that? Yeah. So Bitcoin, I would argue, is the most sustainable form of money. So if you think about how fiat money functions, in order for me to go down the road now and pay my credit card with my credit card just to get a coffee, right? What needs to exist? Well, you need payment terminals. Those payment terminals need to be plugged into a payment network. The payment network is run by businesses all around the world who consume energy. So you have this whole infrastructure of payment terminals, payment networks. Then you need the banks, which are also a bunch of wasteful infrastructure. Then from the banks, you've got the central banks, which are even more wasteful infrastructure.
All the workers that have to drive into work,
Yep,
all the
lights,
plastic
all this
cups
sort of
in the
shit.
little coffee machine, everything
Then
there.
you need the military-industrial complex around that to guarantee that the banks are going to do the right thing. And then you multiply that by every single country in the world. The amount of money, the amount of resources we waste just to have this stupid fiat fucking system is extraordinary. Bitcoin takes energy and converts it directly into money. It's the shortest pathway possible, which is you do compute in order to participate in the game of validation for Bitcoin blocks. and it is literally directly energy into money. It is the most sustainable possible mechanism for a global unit of account that is incorruptible. Like it is, I would say probably a million times, maybe a billion times more efficient than the fiat system in terms of efficiency, and it's also infinitely scalable because you can take that 21 million coins and you can apply it to 7 billion people or 100 billion people. It doesn't matter. It's a fixed cost, whereas with the fiat system, it's not even a comparison.
And I'm super glad you asked that, because that was my personal obstacle for a long time, and why I started out having a huge shitcoin phase, because I read the nonsense that Bitcoin's bad for the environment. Buy this crypto coin, it's way more efficient, has these pretty pictures on the website, like you said, they're really good marketers. So I fell into that for a few years, and it took me a while to really go down the rabbit hole of learning what money is, sound money. And like he said, the fact that the fiat system, when you really actually try to quantify it, it just boggles your mind how much energy that uses, way more than Bitcoin ever will, and it's not going toward a good end goal. It's also creating all of this, I would argue, the majority of the misery we see in the world, as people are just getting poorer all the time. So you have to even try to think about how does that affect the environment, all these people just having no ability to think about the future because they can barely feed themselves.
Yeah, do you know what, I'm going to tie it into his question. Let's talk about inflation, deflation now, because this is relevant.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the biggest issues in the world today is blind consumerism, right? And so you've got blind consumerism, you've got blind gambling, right? Everyone is a fucking trader and options and this and that, right? Everyone thinks they're cool now. But all of that is a function of the fact that money cannot retain its value. We said earlier the Big Mac example. Does anyone know how much a Big Mac cost when they first came out? Huh? 35 cents. That was Big Macs in 55 or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. Has a Big Mac gotten 20 times harder to create? No. So it's like probably 20 times easier. Technically, a Big Mac should cost 5 cents. But because the value of the money is deflated, we are conditioned to do two things. Spend, and people would call it investing, but I don't call it investing. It's fucking gambling. So trading. People get moved. That's why you have so many apps like Robinhood and betting apps and all this sort of stuff. The biggest movement in fintech is all of those kind of applications. So to bring this back to inflation versus deflation, the point of money, the very most important function of money, is to be able to save the product of your labor so that in the future you can transact and get what you need later. Because if you could get everything that you needed right now, you wouldn't need money, right? So you would just like make some water, take a chicken, and swap it right now. But maybe I don't need the chicken now, maybe I need the chicken next week. So I need some mechanism to store the product of my labor in order to transact later. So money's primary function is to store value in order to exchange it later, and then to measure all other goods and services. So therefore, if you have an inflationary money, you lose the capacity to do that because the value that you're storing erodes over time. Modern economists will say, hey, well, what about if it deflates? Then people will not spend. So I always challenge people like this. So if you've got some money that may be slowly going up in value over time, and you need some food, what are you going to do? Not spend? Of course you're going to fucking eat. You will still eat. What Bitcoin does, what a deflationary money does, is it makes you think twice before you spend. We said earlier, consumerism is one of the biggest cancers in the world today. We are buying shit we don't need. Well, guess what? When your savings is slowly increasing in value over time, you think twice about what you're going to buy, because you look at your thing, and I know I do that myself. I'm like, okay, do I really need to go and spend extra on this thing? Like my wife now, she wants a juicer. And I'm like, okay, which juicer are we going to get? And there's like this whole range, and I'm like, okay, well, let's get the mid-range and get that one, right? Because you start to think a little bit more because your money is not being inflated away. So it starts to change the economic direction of all of civilization. So my argument would be deflationary money is the ultimate money. In fact, I wouldn't even say deflationary money, I would say fixed supply money. That's what you want. And then the deflation and the inflation will actually depend on the productivity, because what will happen is if human productivity falls, the money will actually be inflationary, because the amount of money that you have is fixed, and if the productivity falls, then you will need more units of money to buy the same amount of goods. But if productivity increases, you need less units of money to buy the same amount of goods. So all of a sudden, you almost have an ETF on human productivity. The more productive we are, the rate of our productivity, of our collective productivity, let's say our productivity is increasing 3 or 4% a year, the value of the money will increase 3 or 4% a year. If we slow down our productivity, the money's purchasing power will fall by 3 or 4% or whatever it is. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, but right now you're saying it's if you have a slow de-inflation, like slow value gain, but it's not slow right now. I mean the jumps right now are crazy.
Correct.
That's a problem why it's not accepted worldwide.
Very good, very good. So, gold took 5,000 years. Bitcoin's going to take 100 years. So we're still in the first generation of Bitcoin. We're still in the speculative phase. People are still trying to figure out what the fuck this is. There's like how many people here just in this room getting a sense of like what money is. Imagine 99.9% of the world has no fucking clue, which means you're ahead of everybody else. If you understand what this thing is, let's use the gold analogy from earlier. You are literally, buying Bitcoin now is literally finding gold on the ground. It's literally what it is. You're picking it up while everybody is still using chickens and seashells for barter, right? That's literally what buying Bitcoin is now. And in the same way as gold, maybe in the beginning, maybe you had a whole rock of gold and you couldn't buy a single chicken with it. But if you could have lived for 1,000 or 2,000 years and held that gold rock could have bought you a kingdom. Same as Bitcoin now, you know. A Bitcoin right now buys you, I mean, it would have been great if we were talking about this 5 years ago. I could have said, Bitcoin buys you like a trolley full of groceries. Now, one Bitcoin will buy you half the shop, right? So this purchasing power will keep increasing. So while Bitcoin is maturing, it's going to be very violent, up, down, all of that, because the price of Bitcoin is a function not of Bitcoin's attributes, but of human psychology and people's understanding of what this thing called Bitcoin is. That's literally what the price is. So over time, over the next 20, 30, 40 years, as Bitcoin enters our DNA, as it enters our psychology, as it enters our mass consciousness, it becomes money and this stabilizes. So it's just purely a matter of time, that's all.
And an example of that violent volatility he's talking about, if anyone wants to look up a chart, look up the Weimar Germany gold value. Back when Weimar was going through a crazy hyperinflation event where the money was just getting printed into nothingness, the gold value didn't go straight up. It was all over the place. It was spiking up super far, down super far, because people are trying to figure out what's going on, like where am I going to hold my value. So, but the people that held their gold through all of that were massively rewarded. The end of the chart is just a straight line up gold value as the paper went to zero. And we have all of these different fiat currencies around the world today, and hopefully by now kind of understand that they're all trending to zero. And you'll hear different people argue like, oh, should I have dollars, should I hold euro, should I hold this? Because they're all jockeying to be the least shitty of the pieces of paper, basically.
Of the shitcoins.
But they're all going to zero, just at different speeds. So an important point as well to remind folks that a lot of people don't understand is that you won't be able to trade your little goofy pieces of paper for Bitcoin forever, because soon people aren't going to take those anymore. They're going to say, why would I take this piece of paper when I can have the soundest money humans have ever created? I would rather have Bitcoin. So you have to work for it. So you're not going to be able to just trade it for much longer on the exchanges. Who knows when that'll be, but
yeah, I mean,
it's
probably
going to happen.
10, 15, 20 years, like you have an opportunity, like this is the golden opportunity right now. It's like people don't understand what Bitcoin is and they're willing to sell it to you for toilet paper money. Like that's the age that we're in. At some point, you are not going to get it for anything. Like you will have to, as you said, work for it. So I used to tell people when they laughed at me, you know, like Bitcoin at $1,000, I was like, okay, well, you'll be cleaning my toilet one day for 1,000 sats. You know, 1,000 sats today is worth like, what is it worth? $1?
Like $1.
Yeah, $1. Back then, 1,000 sats was worth like a cent, right? So like this is almost an inevitability. Like this is the way the world is trending. Unless an asteroid comes and blows us up, then we don't have to worry about it. But in that case, your US dollars and your fiat money is not going to help either. So it's like, take your pick.
And same with the whole apocalypse argument. People say, oh, if the whole world blows up and the internet goes down, then how's your Bitcoin going to do? Well, it would also take out the entire fiat system that we're on.
If the internet goes down, you better have lead and chickens. You know, you need some eggs and you need to shoot
lots
people
of ammo.
who are going to try and steal your eggs.
Yeah.
That's it.
Exactly.
Do you have a quick question?
Yeah, so sorry I joined late, but maybe you already covered it. What's the difference between like Bitcoin and all the other coins? Like is Bitcoin like the more valuable?
We did talk about that. We can sort of just review it. Do you want to give like a one sentence review?
Yeah,
for a couple?
so basically, Bitcoin is an immaculately concepted, scarce digital unit, right? So you can only have digital scarcity once, because the very fact that you can copy something defeats the purpose of digital scarcity, right? So there's 21 million Bitcoin, that's all there is. There was an anonymous founder, it got released into the market, it cannot be shut down now, it's done. Every single other crypto is an attempt to print money out of thin air, because they realized that they can do what central banks do, which is create zero value, but print money. So every other shitcoin is a shitcoin for the reason that it is owned by someone, controlled by someone, issued by someone. Bitcoin is programmatically issued. We know how much it's going to be now, how many Bitcoin is now, all the way through to 2140 when the last Bitcoin is mined. So it is like the thing. Everything else is like an attempt to print money out of thin air.
And that can't be repeated too many times. So thank you for bringing it up, because some people need to hear it a bazillion times like I did back when I was going through that.
That's a good question here.
So what do you think it would take to make Bitcoin go off the mainstream? So
Time.
Yeah,
Time, and all of us dying, basically. No, and I mean that in a, like, it sounds harsh, but basically we are 1 foot in the old world, 1 foot in the new world. Think about our kids, people who were born after Bitcoin was around, so 2010 onwards. Exactly, they're going to understand Bitcoin completely differently, and then their kids are going to understand Bitcoin completely differently. So we're in the speculatory generation, because we are still measuring Bitcoin against the existing world. The next generation is going to grow up with this Bitcoin thing. When by the time they're 20 and by the time they start working in a capital allocators, they'll be like, the fuck, you use plastic things? What's wrong with you? You know, like, so they'll look at it very differently. And then when their kids grow up, and they're born 20 years, 30 years after Bitcoin came around, they will not understand a world in which paper money exists.
From a world stability perspective, with all the debt that governments have, how will that be managed, in a Swedish way?
There's going to be a lot of volatility, a lot of blow-ups, a lot of shit, a lot of noise, a lot of everything. It's going to be a chaotic period. I call it the interregnum. So I published a book last year called The Bushido of Bitcoin, and in there I talk about interregnum means period between the kings. So you've got the US dollar has been king for the last 50 years. Bitcoin is the new king on the block, but the period between kings is going to be extremely messy, because you've got two different economic paradigms, two different philosophical paradigms. It's also, in the most chaos, exists the most opportunity. And that's exactly what the position is now. We have the opportunity to buy something that in the future you will just not be able to buy for any kind of other money. So it's like we are early in this. And a lot of people are like, oh yeah, Bitcoin's $100,000, it's too much for me to buy it. No. Think of the units. Maybe we should actually mention this as well, right?
I was going to mention one more thing, just
Okay, we'll mention units in a second.
as a tangent to that. When we're trying to figure out what's this transition going to look like, how is society going to go through this transition, what I would recommend is just to get plugged into the Bitcoin community and start meeting people in it, because you see at an individual level, it's changing people's lives completely. It's giving them a much longer time horizon, because they're starting to realize, wow, I suddenly have this money and suddenly I feel like I actually own something, and I'm holding something that's not going down in value over time. I don't have to gamble on stocks just to stay alive and feed myself. And all the housing market, don't even get me started on the housing market. This is another relevant one for us travelers that are trying to pay for accommodation places. The reason why things are so expensive in real estate in general is because the big money out there knows that the fiat currency is going down in value over time. So they want to protect their wealth. They'll put it anywhere but the money. So when you think about how crazy that is, they will hold their money in anything but the actual money itself. Exactly. So they're shoving it into the stock market, which is why it's just going up forever and it looks ridiculous. Why they're shoving it all into real estate, and so you have BlackRock buying up whole cities of neighborhoods.
The whole game is trade fake money for real things.
Exactly.
That's it. So you have an opportunity to trade fake money for real Bitcoin, real money, and this opportunity will be around. I mean, for a while still, but like, it is. We're in the most retarded generation in human history, and the luckiest as well, simultaneously. The most chaotic and the most opportunistic, like both of those. The world is fundamentally going to change with this. I mean, think about it. We were the last generation before the internet. Like, there will never be a generation again that understands like the idea of not having one of these things glued to you, right? Like, so the world is completely fundamentally changed, and with that, Bitcoin kind of like opens up a door to something extremely new. Quick question here, and then we're going to go to the next part.
Yep.
I've followed Bitcoin for a while. A few years ago now, it forked. I can't remember exactly what that was about, but is there a chance of that happening again?
Yeah, the Bitcoin always forks. There's always people trying to change the rules. So what Bitcoin is, people think it's a technology. It's not. Bitcoin is a social consensus. Think of it like a digital constitution. When one person in that constitution, or a couple people, say, you know what, we don't like the fact that there's 21 million Bitcoin, let's do 42 million Bitcoin. What happens is they self-select themselves off the network. So the network just keeps going, 21 million Bitcoin doesn't change, and then they create a fork and they have a new set of rules. So Bitcoin Cash was the one in 2017. They wanted to do something different, but they forked themselves off. And in the beginning, there was a whole hoorah about it. But now you look at it, Bitcoin Cash, when it forked off, it was about $500. It went up to like $5,000, and now it's back at like $300. And since then, Bitcoin was 3,000, now it's 100,000. So the market has chosen, this is the only compatible chain all the way back to the Genesis block.
Because of that set 21.
Exactly. So the beauty of Bitcoin, this is something that fries people's brains, is the beauty of Bitcoin is that any one of you can change Bitcoin. But when you change it, it becomes your version of Bitcoin. So you are actually forked off the network. So I can go in there and I can say, look, I'm Aleks Svetski and I'm going to create Bitcoin Svetski's version. Come with me. And if a couple of you are stupid enough to follow me, we will go on our own network and we will become poor, basically. So, and while Bitcoin will just continue, it's a digital constitution. Its security is in its openness, and this is really hard even for technical people to understand, because in the technical world, so I've got a programming history. In the technical world, you build walls around your software so you don't let people in, so no one can see it, no one can change it. Bitcoin flips the script, which is it's completely open source, it's completely open, anyone can run it, anyone can change it. But when you change it, you're out of consensus and you're no longer part of the Bitcoin network. You are part of whatever network you just created. And that right there is the most powerful. That's why no government can change it, no bank can change it, nobody can change it, because the consensus is amongst the participants who are already on there, and we've passed the critical mass. It's done. The cat is out of the bag.
It is good to think adversarially too. So the attackers that would want to subvert it or take over it somehow, when you really just do the math, and I'll just keep it super basic, the more that it doesn't matter if every government in the world somehow decides to work together and do this, which would never happen. But if they did, first of all, everyone would see that, so they would be able to act accordingly. They could create a new consensus if they wanted to. But it's just going to be so expensive to try to do that, when it would be more profitable for each of these actors in the system to just work with it and get more Bitcoin that way. So we're past the point of no return on it just being really stupid to try to fight it.
All right, let's get into the last bit, and then we can do some more questions.
Do you want to talk about travelers, or do you want to just go to the? What would you like to do?
Let's do a quick one on travelers. You can do
Yeah,
that, and
so-
then we'll download some apps and
Perfect.
we'll send some Bitcoin around to everyone. Okay?
Yeah, so I gave a little bit of a primer earlier about the traveler connection for us nomads, why this matters for us, and I can just give my own personal story from 2 days ago. Going downtown, trying to get some burger patties to eat. I try to pay for Bitcoin. I always ask places, can I buy Bitcoin, or can I buy this with Bitcoin? And a lot of places don't. So some places say you only can get cash. So I was at a shop earlier. They said I can only get cash. Great. So I have to go. I told her, okay, I'll come back. And I'm just used to this by now. So many places I go to, I can buy stuff with Bitcoin. I had to find an ATM, get the cash out, lose money on fees, come back, deal with the change, have this dirty money in my pocket. When you do this in so many different countries, it just becomes so annoying, as we all know. Like, this is just an extra chore for us as we're going around traveling. It would just be so much easier if everyone accepted the same thing everywhere you went. And you also earned the same thing from your work and the value that you created for the world. It was all in one system. There is no case that can be made for why it's better to have all these different sorts of money. And this is another thing that the crypto people will say, like, oh, there will be a bunch of different types of money you can use in the future. That would suck. It would be just like the same problem we're talking about, where, oh, do you have this coin? Do you have this coin? Do you have this? No. It's better if everything is standardized onto one money. So we use what we're going to talk about later, which is a sneak peek of this app called Satlantis, which helps you find the Bitcoin merchants in the area. So I went on Satlantis, found out this place called The House up the road has exactly what I wanted. I went up there, I said, screw the other people that don't accept Bitcoin. They accept Bitcoin. And not only do they accept it, but they're actually super into it if you go there. They have the Bitcoin price written on a whiteboard every day, and the owner's super into it. And you just go there, eat your food, pull out your wallet, boom, paid for and gone. And so it's just so much easier. And everywhere we go and everywhere I travel, we're looking at more and more of these places adopting this thing. You just have to find which merchants are ahead of the game a little bit at this point. But in a few years, it's just going to be everywhere. And there are certain places that have more of it. For example, I was in Uvita, Costa Rica. If anyone goes to Costa Rica, there's a huge Bitcoin base there. El Salvador, as a lot of people have heard, is a huge Bitcoin place. There's Prospera, this sovereign community in Honduras that's fully Bitcoin standard. These small countries are starting to really go all in on it because they have less to lose. It's a little bit harder to find that in the big developed countries, but it's still popping up in certain places like Austin, Texas, in the US, for example. Really big Bitcoin place, tons of Bitcoiners there, pushing the local merchants to get on board, and it's really skyrocketing. But this is just going to get easier and easier to find places that accept Bitcoin, easier to use this as your monetary standard everywhere you go. And it's just going to save you a lot of brain power from having to figure out the ATMs everywhere you go in these different languages and going to banks. And when I was in Mexico, I couldn't even get a place to accept my debit card, so I just had to convince my friends in my hostel to get a Bitcoin wallet so they could pay for me in fiat, I could pay them back in Bitcoin. It's all so complicated. It doesn't have to be that way, and not to mention the money you're losing from all those fees that these leeches are just sucking out of you.
Remember what Jesus did? He flipped the table of the money changers. The money changers are the worst because all they want to do is like snipe you for fees. They're greedy fuckers who want to just take. So Bitcoin does away with all of that. Crypto, fiat, all of it. All right, so everyone, so we're going to do now a little workshop part. Who has a Bitcoin wallet? Okay. Who has a Lightning wallet?
Ooh.
Okay. All right. So we're going to set up, we're going to get everyone to set up a Lightning wallet, and then we're going to do something cool because I'm sure there's people here from every single different country. And we're going to show you an example of, we're going to send some money to this gentleman here first, and we're going to send the money all the way through to everyone along, and you're going to see, like, you'll keep a little bit of it and just send like a piece on it. We call it like a lightning torch, and you'll see how money can literally travel across the world. You don't need anyone's identity, you don't need their fucking bank account details, nothing. Just scan their phone and we do this. So we're going to download 2 different apps. Maybe we'll download 3 apps, okay? First, download Wallet of Satoshi. If you're American, you won't be able to use this, but if you're not American, definitely download Wallet of Satoshi. It's the best Lightning wallet out there.
Should Americans do Primal?
Yeah. If you're American, do
Wallet
Primal.
of Satoshi.
Primal.
Just Primal?
Yes.
Primal, and the logo is a little pink wave.
Yep. And then the third one, download Satlantis. Okay. That's
Yep,
the one.
that's it.
So on Satlantis, we're going to show you where you can find Bitcoin merchants. On Primal, that's a wallet that is built on Nostra, which is going to interoperate with Satlantis. And then Wallet of Satoshi is, in my opinion, the best Lightning wallet in the world. So I'll give everyone a second. Let's do some questions.
So where are my money now? Because these obviously didn't make it to the blockchain because it's just 10-minute. Who's holding my sats?
Very good question. So we mentioned earlier Bitcoin and Lightning, right? So Bitcoin every single 10 minutes syncs up with all of the validators around the world, which we know as miners, and all of the transactions that are in what's called a memory pool get locked into a block, and that block gets chained to the prior block. That's where the word blockchain comes from, right? So when people say Bitcoin is slow, they're talking about the time it takes for all of those transactions to get locked into a block. This happens every 10 minutes, right? This mechanism is not useful for day-to-day payments, right? If you're buying a coffee for $5, why does every single Bitcoin computer in the world, every single validator need to know about that transaction? It's completely fucking irrelevant, particularly at scale. So what Bitcoin engineers and all these other people figured out was they said, all right, Bitcoin can function a bit like a settlement network instead of a transactional network. So Lightning Network is the most prominent second layer on Bitcoin. And the way it works is a little bit like a tab at a bar. So imagine you go to a bar, and instead of paying the bill every single time you get a drink, you go and you just like put it on your tab, put it on your tab, put it on your tab, and at the end of the night, you just make one payment. So the Lightning Network functions a little bit like that. It's an abstracted layer where money is moved around, and then at whatever intervals, depending on whoever is operating the Lightning channels, because the Lightning channel is like a free market of operators, they will, maybe once a week, once a month, once a day, whatever, they will aggregate all their different channels and they will settle one transaction onto the actual Bitcoin blockchain. So the question is, who is holding that money at the moment? the wallet you guys downloaded, Primal or Wallet of Satoshi, they are what's called custodial Lightning wallets, meaning that those companies manage the nodes and are managing your money. That is different to self-custodying your Bitcoin where it's yours. So they almost function a little bit like banks, but they can't fake Lightning because Lightning is it's a protocol. It's not a ledger that they store internally, right? So you still get the protection of Bitcoin, but you get someone to manage it for you. The upside is that it's super simple. We can send money to everyone, get everyone set up immediately. The downside is that the company who's managing those Lightning channels could go bust, could disappear, could steal your money, right? So on the Lightning network, you never hold more than you're willing to lose. Like I hold $2,000 on my Lightning network. So you can think of it, on my Lightning wallet, sorry. So you can think of it as like cash. Like you wouldn't take your life savings and walk around with a wallet in your phone, right? Like you don't do that. So your life savings, you store them on chain, on the actual Bitcoin network. You don't touch that shit. That's your savings. If you need to transact, you can move Bitcoin from the main chain to a Lightning address, and then you use that for spending. Or what I do is my book that I published, I accept Bitcoin payments for it. So every time I sell a book, it all goes into my transactional wallet, my Lightning wallet, and I use that for just general transactions. Or if I'm playing poker with the guys or whatever, we all put some money in on Lightning, and every time I beat them, I have a little bit more Lightning, and we do that. So, but to your point, this is not on the base chain. The base chain is a settlement layer. You do not want to bloat the settlement layer with payments. You can abstract payments on subsequent layers or on abstracted layers.
And you don't want to do everyday transactions for that anyway, because it costs a lot of fees. It's expensive to do that. It's much cheaper to do it on Lightning and slower.
Let's try not to make this too complicated. Shoot.
So you guys allow us to download 3 apps, right?
Yes.
What are the key differences?
The key differences. Great question. So the wallet of Satoshi is purely a Lightning wallet. It's a custodial Lightning wallet. All you can do with it is payments, so receive and send Bitcoin Lightning, right? Satlantis is like a Nomad app, so it's a bit like a social network, and you can find, so there's a merchant tab on there, and if you go into the filter, you can see places that accept Bitcoin. So then you can see a whole network of places. We've got like probably 5,000 places around the globe in all sorts of different cities that accept Bitcoin. So you can see that the Bitcoin economy is growing. There's a bunch of other things you can do on Satlantis. You can post content, you can host events. Like later on, we're going to be hosting a game of Nomad Charades. So you can RSVP to the event on Satlantis. So if you actually find my account, Svetski, you'll see that I'm hosting the event. You can one-click RSVP. So it's kind of like a Nomad app. So meetup.com meets Instagram meets Google Places, right? So you've got all of that. So it's a really cool app. It does not have payments yet. The payments will be ready in about 2 months. So then you have a Lightning wallet inside the app as well. Primal is kind of in the middle. So Primal is a social app, a bit like Twitter. It is built on what's called the Nostr network, which is what Satlantis is built on as well. So your one account on Satlantis and Primal is the same, which is beautiful. So you can move your audience is the same across both. But Primal doesn't have like venues and events and all that sort of stuff. It's just a content platform. But Primal also has a wallet. So Primal is like a social wallet. Wallet of Satoshi is just a wallet. And Satlantis is a social network for nomads.
And something I want to mention here, if anyone is wants to learn more about all this stuff, it's a lot of information we're throwing at you really quickly. Come find me after this is over. I will hook you up with books, podcasts, videos, all kinds of great content where you can really sit down, focus on it with dinner sometime and just like internalize all this stuff. We're going really quick with everything, so don't feel bad if you're a little bit swimming in the
10 years of shit, like...
Yeah.
More questions. Shoot.
Why would you pay merchants with Bitcoin if now is the time to collect? That's a good question.
That's a very good question.
Yeah, it's a very good question. So a lot of Bitcoiners don't. So why would you pay somebody in Bitcoin when now is the time to collect? And there's a massive argument in the Bitcoin space about this all the time. You've got the people who are what we call store of value maximalists. They're like, don't spend Bitcoin under any circumstance. If your fucking family's dying, they need to eat, screw them, let them die. Save your Bitcoin. Like they're like extremely on that. Then there's other people who are like, look, Bitcoin is a payments mechanism, and a lot of these people were around like when Silk Road was around, they were buying drugs online and all this sort of stuff. They're like, use it as payments, it's fantastic. My answer to this, and I've been on both sides of the spectrum, my answer to this is that money needs to be able to be used both for store of value and for medium exchange. I will use it when I need minimal friction for payments. So for example, like last night we were playing poker. It was way easier for me than going to the ATM, getting fucking level, all this sort of stuff. I just do that. If I can go to a merchant and I don't have to bother tapping a card, whatever, I'll pay with Bitcoin. It's like, these aren't massive payments, right? What I will also try and do though, is I'll try and make sure, like, well, let me explain it this way. I earn all of my salary in Bitcoin, 100%. So I only accept Bitcoin. I will not degrade myself to accept toilet paper money for the work that I do, right? So that's how I view it. So I accept all of it in Bitcoin, which means to eat, to pay rent, to do something, I will have to spend Bitcoin anyway. So then I will reward the merchants who accept Bitcoin, and I'll take my business there. So you can do both, basically. It doesn't have to be one or the other, and you do it in whatever capacity you're comfortable with, right? If you're in savings mode and you don't want to spend, just save it. Who cares? But if you need to spend it, spend it.
And there is an element for me personally, just of feeling really good helping support the local merchants that are ahead of the curve and are taking that first step into Bitcoin land, because it's a scary, spooky place for so many people out there. So it feels good to give a tiny little piece of my Bitcoin to people that are on the front running curve of this.
You're
And all you have to do
economy.
to just replace that by going to earn more Bitcoin. It's just motivation to go earn more money. 'Cause eventually this is the only money we're going to be using. So it's just a matter of where you want to be in terms of like holding it extremely hard, like you said, only spending your fiat places, which is totally cool as well. Or if you just want to be completely on the Bitcoin standard, you can do that too. Like the main thing to remember is you want to keep as much as possible, but it's really easy to use. It has all these great functions that make it super good for just saving time and energy in your life. So you find your own balance eventually.
The last thing I'll quickly say to this, and I'll take your question, is there is I don't want to use the word altruistic, but there is an element of this is like, we want to build communities that are off the fiat standard, right? We want to build circular economies that are independent, because I don't know if everyone remembers like what happened in Canada with the trucker protests and everything. People got their bank accounts and all this sort of stuff shut down, right? So like, you want to be in a position where you've got some resilience from that. So what I've done, for example, where I live in Brazil, is I found my butcher that accepts Bitcoin. I found the masseuse that accepts Bitcoin. This. The only thing I'm not paying in Bitcoin is my rent, because the landlord refuses. But what I did was I found someone local who's willing to pay the rent for me in reals, and I just send them Bitcoin, which means I'm entirely on a Bitcoin standard. I'm independent of the banking system. I don't need to worry about the banking system there. I don't need to worry about anything. I don't need to move money internationally and then get asked, like, I used to have a Wise account and I was trying to buy a property there, and it was a fucking nightmare because they kept asking me, where's the money from, where's the money from, where's the money from, and I ended up getting shut down because I told them to go fuck off. So now what I do is, I ended up buying the property by sending someone locally Bitcoin, and he paid the reals directly to the property developer for me. So this, it's very useful to be able to set yourself up in such a way that is resilient and independent of the system. And as the world gets more and more weird, this will become an asset. Your community, your network becomes an asset, which is, again, to tie it back to Satlantis. Satlantis will be a place where you can find other people with similar values who are thinking about being on a Bitcoin standard, where you can find merchants that are accepting. All of this sort of stuff comes together in that app. Excellent question.
And if you are like a big picture save the world type, like I know a lot of us Nomad folks are, you're getting us closer to that future where you don't have to deal with all this inflation, and you don't have to, in the world at large, you're moving the whole world away from fiat, basically. And all those problems we talked about. You're helping, the more that you participate in those economies that are on Bitcoin, help the merchants that are on Bitcoin, and spread the word just through education and everything else. You're making that transition quicker, so we can get to a better world with all the beauties of deflationary money, where things will start getting cheaper again, we can afford houses again, traveling will get cheaper, the airlines will get better, because we didn't even talk about the whole airlines thing. That's a whole different conversation that is very much a part of the fiat system, but it will just help get the world to a better place the more you use Bitcoin, basically.
Question here.
So do both of you have 100% of what you would have had in gas?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm close to 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all of your savings, and then what about stocks? Are you still keeping only Bitcoin?
Couldn't give a shit about stocks, couldn't give a shit about any of it.
Because
I used to complexify my life, so I traded for 10 years. I've traded everything from options, warrants, commodities, pork butts, you fucking name it. I've traded everything. And when I simplified my life and just went all Bitcoin, I don't care. And the beauty of Bitcoin is that it outperforms everything anyway. Particularly now, like over the next 20 years, Bitcoin will outperform everything. Like that is your hurdle rate. So if you like the correct rate, so you don't look at. I learned this lesson the hard way when I was doing shitcoining in 2017. I started off the year with it was about 20 Bitcoin at the time. So you don't even like 20 Bitcoin at the time was worth like what was it? Yeah, 20 grand, something like that. Or maybe it was 15 Bitcoin, something like that. It was a trading account. I set up like $20,000, something like that. And I started trading the whole year. I was trading this shitcoin, that shitcoin, all this sort of stuff on Bittrex. And by the end of the year, I had made about 40%. I had like $25,000 or $30,000, but I had 1.5 Bitcoin. Right? So that was the big dawning on me, because at the end of 2017, remember, it was 20K for 1 Bitcoin. So I fucking spent so much time trading like a moron, and I had less Bitcoin, but I had more dollars. And it dawned on me, I was like, wait a minute, the hurdle rate is not dollars. I'm not trying to make more dollars, I'm trying to make more Bitcoin. So the way I measure my wealth personally is, do I have more Bitcoin today than I had yesterday? If I do, good. If I don't, it's a bad thing. And I just like eliminated everything else, one by one. And all I hold is one simple thing. Nobody can touch it, nobody can take it. I can use it anywhere. I can move it for payments, or I can keep it for savings. Simplified everything.
Okay.
It's important to remember too, just when you're comparing it to the stock market, remember how I was talking about earlier, how all the big money in the world right now is shoving their money everywhere but the money. So they're shoving it into real estate and the stock market. That's overinflating it a lot. So the prices we see in the stock market and the real estate isn't real.
The real value.
It's not real. It's not the real value. It's just because they're all these managers are throwing their money into it. Once they have a better alternative for savings, which is Bitcoin, which for the real estate folks out there, call your friends, hey, do you really like cleaning toilets all the time, dealing with the property managers, or do you really just want to store your wealth? They want to store their wealth. So Bitcoin's a better alternative for them. All those people will take their money out of those things, put it into Bitcoin, so those things will eventually go
reprice.
Get repriced aggressively.
Let me follow that up real quickly. So you guys are at the extreme 100%.
Yeah.
What would you recommend a beginner to?
Not zero.
No.
Not zero, obviously.
Yeah.
Like
The best
10%
answer to this, the best answer to this is you should do it at the percent you're comfortable with, right? So when I first started, I wasn't 100%.
So treat it like you would like a certain stock or
Yeah.
ETF.
Exactly. The more you get comfortable with it, the more you get comfortable with it, the more you will feel like, okay, I'm 100% comfortable with Bitcoin, I'll be 100% in it. I'm 80% comfortable, I'm 50% comfortable.
And you will
whatever.
find that the more research you do, the bigger that percentage becomes as you learn more and more, get more and more comfortable with it. So, yeah.
There we go.
There's a question over here, sir.
I was just going to say, talking about big investors going to safe markets now. BlackRock and all the big players are in Bitcoin now.
Put your leg over and sit kind of sideways.
So yeah, they're definitely moving into Bitcoin. We're seeing, this is one of the big news happenings right now in the last couple of years, is the big money is starting to figure it out. They're saying, okay, we do need Bitcoin. So we see all these giant ETFs coming out, like you talked about, like the BlackRock ETF, and all the big dogs are finally starting to get, okay, we need to have some Bitcoin exposure here, but it's still very early. They're just nibbling at it so far because they have a lot to lose. They make a lot of money in this fiat system where there's money printers that they can scratch their back and lobby for them and everything. So they're only barely starting to get in there, which is good opportunity for all the peasants, where we have much more agility. We can just buy a bunch of it right now. We don't have to wait for them to figure it out. We can front run them. But eventually everyone's going to be using Bitcoin. We have this saying, Bitcoin is for enemies, because even all those giant banker entities that we hate are eventually going to be forced into it too. So don't get fooled by the headlines. They're saying like, oh, like BlackRock has Bitcoin, so it's like Bitcoin's bad now because BlackRock is bad. Eventually everyone will be on.
ETF. Yeah, they're doing ETFs because, I mean, one of the beauties of Bitcoin, because of the way it is structured, the nature of Bitcoin is that it's much easier to custody as an individual, not as an entity, because it's the private key that implies ownership. So if an entity holds Bitcoin, somebody holds the private key. And if that somebody decides to take the Bitcoin and run, the entity holds it no longer, right? So it's like Bitcoin isn't really designed for large-scale entities. It's more designed for people, which is an interesting thing.
You keep it in cold storage, I suppose?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
What about, how do you split your key? If you own it yourself, it's dangerous?
It is.
So what kind of solution do you...
You can be anywhere on the spectrum, right? So, like, for example, for my wife, I have some Bitcoin for her with a custodian called OnRamp, and they have a bunch of protocols that are necessary in order for her to extract the money if something happens to me, if I die or something like that. Because
What if something happens to OnRamp?
it's a risk, exactly. So you need to sort of balance these risks, right? So custody has been a problem from the beginning of time. Like when you have a bearer instrument, like gold, how do you custody gold? You dig it up, you put in a vault, this, that, right? So all of these solutions will come up over time to kind of serve the needs of different people. So you got kind of custody solutions on one side of the spectrum. You have extreme solutions on the other side of the spectrum, which is you could be, like there's a thing called multi-signature in Bitcoin, which you can take a key and you can split it into parts, and you could require 2 of the 3 keys in order to sign a transaction, or 4 of the 5, or 9 of the 12, whatever. You know, you can create a schema, and you can get very complex with these things. So larger entities do stuff like this, right? So you can create some complexity, and you can increase the security of, you know, those keys being found. Like for example, me, I have my keys split up and I have it in 3 different countries. For me to move my Bitcoin, I have to fly to 3 different countries and to unlock my cold storage in order to move it. So my cold storage, I never touch it.
I spread between 2 people, my mom and someone else, and deleted it from my Telegram. So I'll have to ask these 2, and if I die or something, they can combine it. But in practical terms, what I do is I transfer to the exchange to make a very big trade, and then I transfer it back to the cold storage, and I can do it from time to time. But yeah, I'm still looking for that balance, as you say, and because I have to do it quite often for my needs. So if I do it too complicated,
yeah, the friction level has to change depending on your needs, right? And you may have different modes of custody.
It's all trade-offs. The trade-offs from convenience to ultimate security. You figure out where you work best in the middle.
I want both.
Yep. Yeah.
These days I often listen about Bitcoin, how not to spend Bitcoin or how to store Bitcoin. But if you have Bitcoin, how you can do Bitcoin? I mean, for example, I'm a trader of a normal trader, and I have a section of Bitcoin and the crypto value.
What kind of trader? What do you mean?
Normal trading industry, option, this kind of thing. For example, I have 2 questions in one. One is, if I have normal money and I want to buy Bitcoin, how can I not say the system that I'm buying Bitcoin in account? Because I want to store some, so I want to transform that money in that. So
you come and ask me, for example. So you find someone who is in need of dollars or cash, and you do a direct trade, peer to peer.
I do opposite. I have cash, I want Bitcoin.
Yeah, so
but I don't want to say to anybody this.
So you need to find, this is why the importance of building communities, right? So there are multiple services, like if you look up one called Vexel, based out of Czech Republic. There's another one called Peach. You can find people anonymously, and they act as kind of like an escrow service, and people post up some Bitcoin or some cash, and the other person on the other side can take the other side of the trade. And it'd be completely
double of way.
Exactly. So it's
coin, you can have,
exactly. You can go both ways. So there's many mechanisms to buy Bitcoin privately. In the old
but
days,
not through the bank, sure.
No, not through the bank. Like you could do cash, so you could meet with someone.
Cash, and then,
you could do it that way. So again, it depends on the level of privacy. So similar to custody, there's a spectrum.
Exactly.
The first time I bought Bitcoin in like 2015, 2016, I had a brown paper bag full of fucking cash that I met some guy at a cafe. I didn't know if he was going to stab me. I didn't know if I was going to stab him. Like it was this whole like sketchy. I remember we were both like looking at each other like, who is this guy? We both sat down. You know, he's like, where's the money? I'm like, in the bag. I'm like, where's the Bitcoin? He's like, on the computer, I'll send it to you. I was like, okay. He sent it to me. I gave him the bag. It was like this sketchy ass show. And we walked out later and we're both like looking around, waiting to get tackled. So it's like, but it was completely private. No one ever knew I bought that. So like, you know, and I've bought Bitcoin on an exchange, and on an exchange, it's associated to my name, unfortunately. So you got to do both. You can also clean your coins if they've been on an exchange. You can go through a coin join software, which mixes your coins up with a bunch of other people. You know, it depends on the advanced level you want to get to.
They can follow the direction of my money.
Yeah, you can do chainalysis, like this.
The system can follow my money, go there. Also, if after from a crypto wallet, I make them disappear. Maybe I'm trading with some account of crypto. Then maybe I make money with trading with this, and then I take back in my account that money. So it look like just I put 3,000, I bring back 3,000. But then this 3,000 there become more. And but if I bring them to a good wallet, they can see this movement.
Of course they can. Yeah, of course you can see that movement. So then.
It's crypto. I thought everything is.
No, because because the exchange, if you signed up to the exchange will have your details because they KYC'd you. So they got your name, everything, and that relationship between that wallet and the exchange is visible on the public blockchain, and then they can infer that you own this wallet. You could say, well, that wasn't me, someone took my account and stole my money.
If, during the declaration, they can say, because it's already happened to me, and they say, oh yes, I put in another wallet and I lost it. And,
you can say that, of course, yeah, exactly. So you got some level of plausible deniability, yes.
Because also them, they cannot know, because, oh, I promised to write the code to, or I give money to some friends.
Exactly, yes,
wallet.
yes. You can easily say that. But it like...
Thanks for coming, appreciate it.
Yeah. All they can do is they can assert that you own that wallet. They can't prove that you own the wallet. Yeah, but they can assert that, which is in many countries strong enough.
Happy to help.
As
people are leaving, if they want more help or more resources, like I mentioned earlier, just tap me on the shoulder. I'll send you some stuff.
Yeah.